What is up, Kingdom Heart fans? Simon here. Welcome to HannaTalk. Hope you're all doing fantastic. Today I'm here with a very special guest star. Now, this is an actor who is best known to fans as Axel from Kingdom Hearts, but he's also best known from the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, but he's also starred in several other franchises, including Bleach, Naruto, the Marvel Universe, Digimon, and so much more. Please welcome back the amazing Quinton Flynn.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. My God, Simon, that's a fantastic introduction. I'm thrilled.
That's absolutely no problem at all,
It's been
Quinton.
great being here. See you guys.
That's absolutely no problem at all, Quinton. How are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
I've been doing very well, of course. Obviously, the last year was definitely kind of a roller coaster, I think, for every single one of us,
Oh yeah.
without question, which actually goes into, like, obviously during what's been happening with the pandemic and the virus, how have you been keeping things up, especially on the acting side of things?
Well, it's been unusual. I mean, we've had to do things a lot from home, home studios. In fact, one of the last jobs I did was a session for an animated feature, and there were a number of us on Zoom, so we could see each other from different locales while recording together. And it was pretty outstanding. Um, Also, been some video games, and that was where I wouldn't see anybody. I would just be isolated and hear everyone in my headphones. Aside from that, it's been I've gone through a lot of the same stuff that you guys have. Just a lot of isolation, unfortunately, um, which has been very difficult. So I've stayed in touch with people via Zoom, via phone calls, things like that, and just hanging in there. Uh, writing, creating, um, working on a bit of music. I've got a single that we're going to be releasing soon, which I'm excited about. And I've been writing with an outstanding writer, a gentleman by the name of Richard Harrell, on a pilot sitcom that we've been working on. So that's kept us busy. I did a convention in Minneapolis a few weeks ago, and it looks like I've got one coming up in Chicago the weekend of July 4th. What else? Down the line, a one-man show, but at this point, it's hard to kind of suss things out because I was doing so much live, a lot of stage work, comedy. I was doing stand-up before the lockdown. I was doing a lot of live shows in Hollywood, West Hollywood, at the Viper Room, where we were doing Monday night jams, and those are great. Did about 6 months of those straight before the lockdown. So it's unfortunate for live performances. There haven't been any. We're talking 14, 15 months now, and really not sure what the future holds.
I definitely understand from that kind of perspective. As many people will obviously know me with being a musician, of course, as well as being the host of HannaTalk for the last 6 years, that it's definitely been tough for a lot of people in the entertainment industry just in general, because obviously with what's been going down here in Australia, we're currently in lockdown, in a fourth lockdown actually, right now as we speak, and it's been very, very tough for a lot of people in the entertainment industry. But it's funny that you mentioned about, of course, with conventions, because just a few weeks ago we had our first Comic-Con in Australia for the first time since last year, actually, when the lockdown took place. So that was quite a lot of fun, actually. But I definitely understand.
Yeah, you were able to attend that, yeah?
Yes, I was actually. That was my first comic convention, I think, in about 5 years. So the last comic convention I went to, this was Supernova in Australia, and the last time I went there was, I think, in 2016, I believe, when I met Brina Palencia and Trina Nishimura. Shout out to them, by the way, who are fantastic. That was the last convention that I went to, and they actually had Spike Spencer as one of the voice acting guest stars, because he's been living in Australia for the whole time of the lockdown. And in fact, I had the chance to interview him last year during that time, which was a lot of fun.
Is he there with his wife and their child?
Yes, he did. He mentioned about the fact that he's been having his family down in Australia during that time. So it's really good that he's been staying in Australia during this time, and he's had his family for support and everything. And it's been tough. It's been tough on a lot of us, really. But I think it's been tough for anybody that has to go through lockdown like this, especially like if they don't have that support with them physically in the room with them. But I think just by having that connection, and because of having the access to technology the way that we have, we're able to have that support system through very difficult times.
Absolutely, absolutely. It helps. It certainly does help. But we do need to touch grass from now and again, and get out there and see one another. So, gosh, the sooner the better.
Absolutely.
I will say that convention that we did in Minneapolis a few weeks back, that was the first one that I'd done in over 14 months, and it was wonderful. I particularly enjoyed doing panels. I did 3 days in a row, 50-minute panels where I always aim to inspire, educate, and entertain, and do character voices and impressions, and take a lot of questions from the audience. And yeah, it was great fun.
Absolutely.
And I miss it in Australia. It's been a while since I've been there. And my friend David, Jonathan Doyle, Gary keeps in touch. He and his wife. And right now, of course, I'm looking at a wonderful picture of you behind a drum kit. Now, do you write and sing as well as play drums?
I'm primarily just being just a drummer for the time being. So I've always been a freelance musician for the last couple of years. Actually, is when I started to get into more freelance work. In that fact, but I've been playing professionally for about 6 years now. So it's definitely been tough. From as you mentioned about, of course, with any sort of entertainment, it's definitely been tough in that regard, and having to do the more tech-based and online services. Fact, but yeah, it's been obviously with coming out of the last lockdown, it's been going back into the live stuff kind of fair bit, which has been a lot of fun. But now going into this current lockdown, it's been a little bit difficult, but we're just going to have to wait until we're finally out of this. It's not really a question of if, it's more just really a question of when, though.
Right. That's right.
Absolutely.
In fact, the last time I was there, I was in Darwin. I want to say it was 2019, and we had a wonderful group, wonderful turnout, and wonderful gal named Kelsey and her husband were very welcoming, and I've kept in touch with a few messages. She and her husband Patrick, and so that's the other thing. WhatsApp has been wonderful to get messages, from folks like Kelsey, and Messenger from folks like yourself. And there's a band I played with in the UK and in London particularly. And their drummer Dan O'Donoghue wrote me recently. So I've got cousins across the pond. So every once in a while, a message will pop up, and it's great because it takes me out of myself, which I'm thinking is the toughest part for most folks, especially those, and I don't mind saying it myself. I tend to struggle with depression, and so this kind of thing makes it even worse for those of us who suffer mental health issues. And it's key that we keep in touch, and I think put that out there. Oftentimes there's a stigma attached to it because people don't tend to talk about it at a public level. It's not really discussed much in the news, but I think a lot of people have suffered greatly from it. I know they have during the lockdowns, and other folks with problems with addiction as well, who I just pray are getting the help they need. And I just hope people are keeping close and knowing. And if anybody's listening right now and you think that you're you're alone and nobody cares. People do care, and you are special, and you are loved, and we're going to get out of this together. So reach out to others, and have faith. Have faith.
Absolutely, and I think that's fantastic advice right there. And it's actually interesting you were talking about that, because there was an interview that I came across that I believe you did around sometime last year, I believe it was, where you were talking on this podcast about struggles with depression, of course, with abuse and everything, which I thought was amazing. I thought, wow, that is fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this gentleman contacted me through a friend. I had actually done an audiobook that I co-produced called A Night in Jail. And my friend Heidi Anderson Swan, she's an author, H.A. Swan, wrote this book and wanted me to narrate it. And it was about her brother who suffers from mental illness. And he had a hell of a journey from the streets where he was addicted, and then he got the proper help. He was in and out of jail more than a dozen times over the years before they figured out that his marijuana smoking as a youth had exacerbated his problem. And I want to say it's schizophrenia. Hopefully I'm on the mark there. That said, it's a great read. It's a novella. And the audiobook that we did is wonderful because I got to play two roles. Him as a young man in prison with another man, a grizzled man. So there was the young self, and then there was the old grizzled self telling the kids, you don't know what you're doing. Both perspectives on the life that one might have and the life that one has had without help. I myself have over 24 years of sobriety and recovery. I can say in a general way, I work with a particular 12-step group that helps others. And if someone were to look at the beginning of an alphabet or a phone book like we did in the old days, it would start in the A's. That's all I can say to keep anonymity. And it's just one person helping another. The rooms where we had meetings in person, we do on Zoom, and they're not only local, but I can attend them anywhere in the world.
That's fantastic.
And, every Saturday out of Los Angeles, we happen to have a meeting that is just a virtual meeting, and it's an international group. And you're right, yeah, it is fantastic, man. It's a gift.
Absolutely. And I think honestly, I will say this straight off the bat, that if I had turned this podcast into an actual live talk show right now, and just the advice you give off from that, I'd swear there would probably be a standing ovation as we speak if we were doing this in front of a live audience right now, because that is fantastic.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's someone helped me, and then I helped someone else, and we all help each other. Just even you and I speaking right now, that it helps me, and I'm sure it helps you.
Absolutely, very much so, very much so. And I think if people start to have that sort of same mentality that you have, I honestly think the world would be a better place to live in. I really think it would.
Well, I agree.
Fantastic.
Take some time out to think about someone else. I know I find a bit of prayer and meditation is also helpful. And then I got to take some action. But then there are those down times where I suffer, as other people do. And the last thing I want to do is pick up a phone and call someone or write someone, because it feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds, or the thought is, gosh, I'll be bothering such and such or so and so if I do that. But on the contrary, people are thrilled to hear from somebody else because they may be going through something themselves.
Absolutely, very much so. And I think just by doing one thing like that, just asking, are you okay, for other people, and of course just like asking if you yourself are all right, it makes a massive difference. It really, really does. Absolutely, and that is fantastic. Now, going straight into the acting side of things, now, with any series that you've done in the past, obviously sorry about the segue there, but for any series that you've done in the past and that you are currently working on now, where your character is like a main character or a character that's featured prominently across the series, do you know where your character is going in terms of its arc or its story, or is everything just recorded out of context?
Excellent question. Well, gosh, how can I say this? It depends on what it is. You know, in the video game series or the video game world, when I'm doing a particular character, whether it's Axel from Kingdom Hearts or Raiden from the Metal Gear series, a lead role like that, when I go in to record, I'm given a script, but they do it out of order in a non-linear fashion. They don't give me any script in advance, so they're guiding and directing me, and I'm learning as I go and sorting things out. And in those cases, there is a story. Axel, I've always worked alone in the booth, and they'll have a video camera on me while they're recording the audio, so that way they can sync up my mouth when they adapt it from Japanese into English, or adapt it.
Mm.
And then as far as some of the other ones go, like the Metal Gear series, I would work with other actors in the booth in a scene-like fashion, just like being on stage. So there was a give and take, and we'd get to hear one another while we would be focused on our copy. So it would be interesting because, you know, we'd read out loud about 2.5 pages, and the director would then give us notes. We'd make quick adjustments, and we'd hit record, and we would go through that, probably one pass, then a second pass, and then if the director here, she wanted something different, if the writer producer wanted something different, they would do what are called pickups. They'd ask us to go to a particular line and reread that and re-perform it for them. Again, the interesting thing is we have to be in the moment, make it come alive, doing the best we can with what we know at that time. And that's a little bit different than animation. Animation, you do it things usually from start to finish, beginning to end, with a script, with an ensemble, where people are sitting near one another. And anime, of course, a different beast altogether, where you go into a booth alone. You've got the director on the other side of the glass, got a script in front of you, a TV monitor, headphones on, and you hear 3 beeps, and then start performing and acting, trying to sync up your words with the character. So it's a rhythmic thing, it's a musical thing, but also acting to make it sound natural. And in those instances, that's probably the most fragmented of all the genres I've just given you. You're literally in and out with no idea about the arc of the story. You may come in, do, let's say, 2-3 episodes, come back another time, and a few other episodes have passed. Or they may jump ahead to scripts that are ready down the line, and then the next time you come in, go back in time to scripts that weren't ready. So it's wild, man. It's not like watching a play or doing a play. It's not like watching a television program or a feature film, or even as a gamer playing a game. We do not get the whole picture. And to answer fans' questions, if they have any in their heads right now, I would imagine they would say, do you watch your own work, Quinton, or do you play, the games that you do? I don't. Occasionally, I'll find something online and I'll have a look of a cartoon I've done or some playthroughs from a video game. Oftentimes, fans at conventions will play things for me, but usually I have moved on to another project, and by the time what I've done is revealed or released and is in the fans' hands or view, I'm doing something else. And I love what I'm doing when I'm doing it, but like I said, by the time it comes out, I'm on to something else. So I'm generally working, involved, and away from it. So I have to hear about it after the fact. And also, by the same token, I hear about projects that I may be working on in the future online from fans who really have a finger on the pulse. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But that in itself is not linear as well.
Right. That's fantastic. It's funny that you were mentioning about, of course, with like the whole story arcs and all that kind of stuff, because there actually are some actors, and I've interviewed a few of them before in the past, like for example with Aaron Roberts and Amber Lee Connors, who actually have read the manga for works that they've like worked on in the past, so they can have an idea for where the story is going ahead. And as I think in the words of Aaron Roberts, what he said to me, so he could give off the best performance he can, even though a lot of it is based on dubbing. But on the other side of that equation, you've got Joshua Seth, who's best known from the Digimon universe, who said to me, from when I interviewed with him last year, who said the advice he got from this one actor who said to him, don't read ahead, just be surprised.
I agree with Joshua. Being in the moment, being surprised, because it gives us the best performance. Just like life, you and I don't know what we're going to say next, and there is a sense of surprise about it. There is something natural about it. There's something different about it. And I have found myself in acting where I may say a particular line a certain way, or discover something in the moment, and they may say cut, and I may say to the director, "Oh gosh, let me do that again." And sometimes they'll allow it, and other times they'll say, "No, we got exactly what we wanted." I'd say, "Really? I thought that sounded rubbish." And they say, "No, you nailed it." I thought I nailed it. Again, I was unconscious. So yeah. Sometimes there's magic in the moment, man. There really is.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely true in that regard as well. And it's funny you're mentioning about, of course, with like performances regarding that in that regard, because like when it comes to like, for example, I think there was an interview I was watching with Todd Phillips when he was working on the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, and where he got asked about like, was he wrestling with the legacy aspect of the character? And he said, no, I mean, Jack Nicholson was the first one that I saw and I loved him. Heath Ledger preceded that and I love that too. So he was just trying to do his own interpretation of the character. And for him, he viewed kind of the stories in the comics as just like the American Shakespeare. There's more than one version of Romeo and Juliet. There's more than one version of Hamlet. There's going to be more than one version of the Joker out there. So,
yeah.
Absolutely.
You said it was Todd who said that?
Todd Phillips, who was the director for the Joker movie.
No, of course, yeah. I was wondering if it was Todd or Joaquin. But yeah, he's spot on. Great way to look at it.
Absolutely. And speaking about, of course, with story arcs, talking more about with Bleach, because the last time I think I spoke with you, I think I was still in the midst of watching the series at that time, and I had gone to the final episode for where the anime had stopped, and it was fantastic. One of the best action anime I've seen in a very long time, and you did a fantastic job as Cone in the series.
Oh, thank you. I love playing Cone, man. So fun. I'm hanging out with Simon Hanna. He's a host, he's a drummer, he's the best. Ow, stop kicking me. Leave me alone.
Fantastic, absolutely wonderful.
I'm gonna take one of his drumsticks and beat up on
you. Fantastic, absolutely wonderful. Now, speaking about more with Bleach, now it was announced last year from the creator of the manga that they're actually adapting the final arc from the manga itself, which was considered the real ending to the series. How excited are you to know that there was more story to be told in the anime? And did you feel as though that with the way the anime had ended, did you ever feel like there was going to be more story to be told with Bleach in general?
No. I mean, I didn't have a clue. No one said a word. It just kind of ended as they do. And I just assumed incorrectly that was that. But you're right. I've heard rumblings as well, and mumblings and hoping it turns into a reality, because that would be wonderful.
That would be absolutely fantastic if that was the case. But to hear that coming from the actual creator itself, like literally just say, yep, we're actually doing an adaptation of the final arc from the manga, I went like, fantastic. Because we've been waiting, just like with any sort of anime, for example, has lasted for as long as it has, especially like a series where the manga is still continuing on at this point, but they haven't adapted that into the series yet. It's like, well, when are we going to get a revival of the series? When are we going to get like actual stories of this story told into the series? Because we've been waiting for like the last 10 or 15 years for the story to finally be told, and now here it is.
Yeah, it's surprising because I can't imagine anybody imagined it would happen with that gap of time. And unfortunately, there are times with animated series or anime where people have been able to read further down the line and nothing else is produced. And in the American world, of course, it's different because usually the animated series are just they're based on a creation, not a series. Not always, but there was one I did for Nickelodeon called My Life as a Teenage Robot, in which I played Sheldon Lee, and he was wonderful. And that series, we did 3 seasons. I believe there were supposed to be more, but then it was canceled. So unfortunately, there was no ending. And fans have clamored for more over the years, and the creator, of course, said, well, I'd love to do more. And the actors said, we'd love to do more. So that, I think in that case, it really depends on a company like Nickelodeon and maybe some other producers to say, hey, we're inspired, let's pony up the dough and make it. In the case of a Bleach, as you mentioned, now I don't know enough about that, but it sounds like the creator had involvement along with the production team and the powers that be to take that next step, which is great.
Absolutely, which I think is fantastic. And if they could manage to do a revival of the Invader Zim TV show, which obviously starred Wally Wingard, which last time I spoke with him, said he was very excited that they finally did a revival of the Invader Zim series and turning it into a film. And of course, just to finish off that whole entire story, and the same thing with the Hey Arnold movie as well, to finally finish off the cartoon series, then anything is possible at this point.
That's true. It really is.
Absolutely.
My dear friend Richard Horvitz is in Invader Zim, and I love him. He's amazing. I've known him since I started in the business. We've been friends easily over 25 years, maybe 30. So I was thrilled for Richard. And Wally's a dear friend. I love him. He's great. So it's always wonderful to see your friends having opportunities to work and create again. So anything's possible, man. It's exciting to us as talent as much as it is to the fans.
Absolutely, it's definitely true in that regard as well. It was exactly the same thing that happened when they had made the announcement of the Fruits Basket remake, because that was actually one of the first series that only did about 1 season in the earlier around 2001, and then we had heard, and there was no season 2 for the last until it got to about an announcement when the reboot was being made, and we went like, wait, what? And then we heard the announcement of them bringing the original cast members back, from Laura Bailey to Jerry Jewell to pretty much most of the original cast members, to say, we're going to be doing a reboot of this, and it's going to be exactly like it is from the manga. We're just picking up...
Yeah.
So anything at this point is totally possible, which I think is amazing. So, yeah.
It really is.
Absolutely.
And Ricky Simmons as Gur, you were talking about Invader Zim. Now, Gur, if I'm not mistaken, isn't Gur in the Zim series?
I'm not entirely too sure. I haven't really caught too much up with the Invader Zim franchise all that much, but the only thing I did hear about it was the film though, which was essentially meant to cap off the entirety of the series, though.
Right.
But it's definitely on my watch list for sure. So, without question, once I start getting through the series, I'll pretty much know what everyone is talking about at this point. Absolutely. Now, speaking about, of course, with more with Bleach, now there was the live-action Bleach movie, which had several of the cast members from the anime returning, such as Johnny Young Bosch and Stephanie Sheh. Did you ever watch the film yourself, and what's been your opinion on anime being adapted for live action?
No, you know what? This is the first I'm hearing about it. So I did see it, and I know both of those actors, and they're terrific. Now, were they seen in the live action, or were their voices used?
As far as I can,
you know?
Last time that I actually looked up about the series, the last I heard about it, they actually did come back for both their characters. So Johnny Young Bosch obviously came back as Ichigo, and Stephanie Sheh, she was actually brought back as Orihime. But as for the rest of the other actors, I think even Michelle Ruff came back for Rukia. But I think for the rest of the other actors, they actually recast some of the voice actors to dub over the Japanese actors.
Wait, you're talking about a live action film, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so Johnny and Stephanie, their voices were used for their characters, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Over a live action person?
That's right.
Did you see it?
I actually didn't get the chance to see it, but I actually have seen processes like that done before when they did the Rurouni Kenshin movie, and when I heard about them doing a live-action Bleach movie, I went like, oh, it's almost the exact same process, where they have a Japanese actor, and to bring it to English dub, they just brought in like the voice actors to dub over the Japanese speech, but it's just done live action.
That's wild. Okay, now I have the full picture, because I wasn't sure if it originated in Japan, or in America, so now I get it. I would be curious to see that, especially hearing Stephanie and Johnny's voices over a live-action person. That might be interesting.
That actually has been done.
I can't imagine. Well, maybe they had Conan there, but I don't know.
Right. Well, as far as I can tell,
Conan there would be, you'd have to have a character like the movie Ted. You'd have a live-action plushie. Which would be fun and bizarre.
as far as I can tell for that first movie, because I think they've only just done the one movie at this point, but it sounds like they're going to be building up to doing sequels at some point, because they're essentially just doing the very first stories that were done in the anime as well as from the manga. But as far as I can tell, I think they're still planning to do sequels for it, but I don't think Kon was actually featured. Kon was featured in the first film though, so it sounds like they're going to have him appear in the sequel, and they were just doing kind of an abridged version of several of the story arcs from the very first stories. But in general, what's been your opinion with anime being adapted for live action from several of the adaptations of other anime that we've seen over the last few years?
Well, I honestly don't have an opinion, only because I haven't seen anything to be able to have or form an opinion. If I did, then I could have one, but without seeing it, I really can't say. Again, it depends on. I think it depends on budget. It depends on the creators, what they're looking to do. I would say I often find. I can only think of it from the Western point of view when they take a comic book character or characters, whether it's DC or Marvel, and develop a series or develop a film. And for my money, if they're honoring as close to the original feel and style, then I think it can be great. But if they go off in a different direction, it can be odd. So my hope and wishes are always that it stays closer and truer to perhaps the original storyline, and makes everybody happy.
Absolutely. I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head with that. There actually have been several live-action anime adaptations being announced, and actually still are being in development as we speak, from Cowboy Bebop right down to One Piece. And it was announced for the One Piece live-action series, they actually gone as far as to get the creator for the manga to be consultant, and I think even be an executive producer on the series. So I think that's actually the best approach, in just having the people that respect the source material, that keep it true to the material as much as possible, and even going as far as to get the creators themselves, or the people that were responsible for giving us this material in the first place, to just be there and say, all right, all right, let's take it from this point, not let's not go off in this direction here, that kind of thing, which I think is fantastic, actually.
Well, I do too, and I think it's wonderful for the creators that, that they have an opportunity to express themselves and have a voice and a point of view, and perhaps, share with those during the production who may not know it as well, because oftentimes people are brought in with a particular set of skills, who may not know the story, but may be the right person or persons.
Absolutely.
Bring that film to life.
Absolutely. And my question out there to not just you, Quinton, but also the listeners when this interview is up, let me know in the comments below, do you want to see Cone appear in the next live-action Bleach movie? And leave a like or a comment if you really want to see Quinton Flynn return as Cone for the live-action movies.
Please do that. It'd be so great. I would love it.
That would be amazing. And actually going another step further, leave a like or a comment if you really want to see Quinton Flynn make a Stan Lee cameo in the next Bleach movie, because that would just be so awesome.
Oh, that's a great idea. I would be all about that. That would be fun.
That would be absolutely fantastic. And talking about more with regards to other series that you worked on, such as mentioning about, of course, with Digimon, but also Naruto, they're actually currently airing the reboot to the original Digimon series, as well as continuing the Naruto series with Boruto. Will we hope to see you come back into the world of Digimon and Naruto down the line?
Well, I don't know. Good question. I did Digimon Data Squad with Jeff Nimoy, and he wrote, directed, did some acting in there, real creative, dear friend of mine, and we had a ball. I played Marcus Damon, so that was a particular series that if they brought that back and that character back, then hopefully they would consider me. I mean, I would say if Jeff had a hand in it, then there would be a real good chance. And if it was produced by Studiopolis with Jamie Simone, then there'd be a real good chance. Now, as far as Naruto goes, I'm sorry, what was the question there?
Like, will we hope to see you come back into Naruto, especially with the Boruto series, because that's kind of where the series is going down, like going down to the next generation of ninjas, like with Naruto's son, Boruto.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. They did some recasting with that when I was away touring. That might have been 2018, 2019. I'm not sure when it was that they did some recasting. And I was back in Los Angeles, but I was away in the U.S. and abroad. So I think they needed to have someone sub for me. And I'll just speak in a general way. I spoke to a producer who said they wanted me back, but because I was unavailable at the time they needed to record, they needed to go with somebody else. And usually they tend to get somebody who might sound a reasonable facsimile to what the other actor did, in this case me. I haven't heard what this other person has done. I've heard from many fans that they're disappointed that I wasn't on board. I think, Iruka Sensei's older, and older I can do. I can do young, and I can do old, because I have a particular set of skills. And so yeah, no, I would love to be back on that if it worked out in such a form or fashion that they would be willing to make that shift or change. And if they don't, well, that would be beyond my control.
Fantastic. Well, I think if they can manage to do a reboot of the original Digimon Adventure series, especially after having finished off the entire arc of Digimon Adventure, going all the way back to the very first series, then anything is possible at this point. And I think, like with the Boruto series, there will always continue to be more Naruto stories down the line. So it would be fantastic to see you come back into the world of Naruto, even if it's a completely different character as well.
Oh, I'd be up for that. And interesting fact, I was the original voice of Deidara in Naruto.
Wow.
And, yeah, and you can find it out there. It's on YouTube, and there are a number of fans, including my wife, who really love me for that character, and ask me, why we replaced. I said I have no clue, but my only guess is that perhaps they wanted separation with me as Iruka Sensei, and not to have me as two different characters. But doing two different characters is not a problem for me, but I think for them, they wanted to make sure that it was very clear and very different, and they probably preferred my strength as Iruka Sensei over Deidara. But I did love playing Deidara. He's fun, The way I played him, he's a bit sarcastic. And so you never know.
Absolutely. That would be fantastic, actually. And from what I've heard about what they've been going with the new Naruto series, is they have been going into kind of the time travel aspect of the series without going into spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen that series. So if they can, because of them doing the whole time traveling aspect of the series, then if they can bring you back for just like a little one-off appearance in the series just to make reference to that, that would be amazing, actually.
Yeah, very, very cool.
Absolutely.
Doctor Who fans out there.
Absolutely.
Get me a TARDIS. Let's go.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, now, of course, speaking about, as you were talking about before, with working on video games before, with Detective Pikachu and Sonic the Hedgehog breaking the curse of live-action video game adaptations, are there any particular video game projects you've worked on that you want to see adapted for live action?
Well, I think the Metal Gear series would be great. And that one in particular. I'm trying to think if there are any others that escape me. That's the one that comes to mind the most for me. With Final Fantasy, we did do a CGI film, Final Fantasy Advent Children, which was pretty great. That could be a cool live-action film.
Absolutely, that would be fantastic, actually, both for the Metal Gear series as well as Final Fantasy, because obviously, we were talking about, of course, before with Kingdom Hearts, how Kingdom Hearts in and of itself is essentially a crossover with the Disney franchise, but also a lot of the Final Fantasy characters themselves.
Right. And I don't know what you could do with that. Obviously, I can't see that being live action, especially with the classic, Disney characters of Mickey Mouse and Timon, Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful face. I don't see, or Goofy for crying out loud. How are you gonna make him live action? Unless you're doing a Space Jam kind of thing, and then it's just gonna be bizarre.
Absolutely. Well, it was actually reported last year that because Disney basically owns the rights to the obviously the Disney characters that are used in Kingdom Hearts, it was reported that they're actually developing a TV series on the Kingdom Hearts franchise. But that's just all they said about it. I don't know if it's going to be like full-on animation or if it's going to be like a Space Jam Who Framed Roger Rabbit situation. It would be amazing if that was the case, actually.
I'm not sure. I guess my first thought was it would be animated. It depends on the budget. The CGI thing could be really cool. But it's anybody's guess. And they've been knocking around the idea of animation for that series for at least 2 years now. And obviously it's gone on longer, probably because of COVID. But they're keeping it under wraps, tightly under wraps. So none of us really know.
Absolutely, but I think because of the fact that we're now starting to get so many video game adaptations as of coming out from last year, and especially because of the success of Detective Pikachu, and now with Sonic the Hedgehog, it's like saying, well, it shows that we can do like great video game adaptations, that it can be done.
Yeah, that's true, and it was really fun to see Jim Carrey at work in that one.
Absolutely, and he honestly did a fantastic job with his performance as Dr. Eggman in that one, but also the fact in like the sequel is now starting to go a lot deeper into the Sonic the Hedgehog mythology, in that with now bringing in Knuckles, doing the Chaos Emeralds, it's like, wow, they're really going heavily into the mythology at this point, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's lending a credibility to it, almost like a Lord of the Rings.
Absolutely. And speaking about, of course, more with Sonic the Hedgehog, is we've obviously now just been announced with the sequel, and obviously to many people out there who've not seen the original Sonic the Hedgehog film, there's a post-credits scene that introduces a very big character into the series, Tails, and Colin O'Shaughnessy went as far as to come back as the voice for Tails. Is there anything in particular you would like to see them do in the live-action Sonic the Hedgehog movies beyond the sequels?
Gosh, I don't know. First of all, I'm thrilled that Colleen did that. She's terrific. I guess all I can say, very special guest star Quinton Flynn as Silver. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but that's one of the things I would think that would be fun.
That would be absolutely fantastic, and I think they could have the opportunity to go a step above and beyond that, to actually go as far as to get the voice actors for live action cameos. So do like a very Stanley cameo kind of appearance, which would be fantastic, actually.
That would be genius. I mean, we would all love to do that. And I can't speak for all actors involved in this particular project, but in general, most actors are actors who act. So we've all had our share, most of us anyway, of stage, bit of TV and film here and there, and acting is acting is acting. We all started somewhere, and we all have those skills, because what people tend to not recognize or not understand is that voice acting is acting. It's just a different medium, and to be able to have us there in a cameo situation could be really, really interesting, because everybody's got great chops. All these folks, from seeing them around, hanging around in the lobbies of studios, running into them at conventions, or having worked with them in the booth, they're just dynamite actors. Actors and actresses all around. Fantastic, committed, and fun.
Absolutely, and that is definitely true, and especially because of the fact that we're now starting to see a lot of film franchises trying to develop cinematic universes, because Marvel being essentially the first one to kind of start that whole cinematic universe. Now DC following that, and of course Star Wars now starting to do the exact same thing in the TV universe, and now with the whole Godzilla and King Kong stuff starting to develop their own monsterverse and such. I think at this point anything is possible, really. They could develop
You're absolutely right.
They could develop
my thought is, Simon, that you should be my manager, and a manager to a lot of other actors out there. Also, a creative force that you are, given your own company to do this kind of thing. That's what I'm saying. Folks, Simon Hanna, okay? Give it up for him. Give it up to him. The man knows a hell of a lot, and more than he's letting on.
Well, I'm just a fan of this kind of stuff, so just me giving off my own ideas, basically. But I'm sure that.
Great ideas.
Thank you for that. I'm sure there's going to be a listener out there just jotting down ideas, going like, "Oh, that's actually a great idea. Let's take that."
Right. Well, and make sure you give credit where credit is due. I'll say it again, and folks. Simon Hanna, Hanna. Hanna's our man.
Well, thank you for that, Quinton, because that would be fantastic. And speaking about a little bit more with Kingdom Hearts, now your most recent role in the Kingdom Hearts franchise was, of course, coming back into the Kingdom Hearts universe with Kingdom Hearts 3, returning as the voice of Axel. What was it like to come back into the world of Kingdom Hearts with Kingdom Hearts 3?
Well, it was really fun, and interesting too, because he was Lee. It's Axel and Lee, and if you followed the franchise, Lee, when he first appeared, was a younger version, and with Axel, I don't want to give anything away, but let's just say Axel passed on, and then came back around, and then you go from young Lee to older Lee, who looks like Axel but doesn't have the teardrop marks, and people get confused. He reveals, "No, I'm Lee. I'm not Axel, but you look like Axel." So anyway, for me, it was great to be back. Wonderful to be able to incorporate a bit of humor, which we did do in Kingdom Hearts 3, and I got an opportunity to break the fourth wall and actually address the audience. And speaking to fans, that was something that they loved, and I got an opportunity to evoke some of my natural sarcasm that just tends to come out. So, yeah, man, I was thrilled. It was great, and hopefully they won't wait as many years as they did to get to 3 before they get to 4.
Absolutely, which actually goes into my next question here. Now, obviously, they're going to continue to develop games within the main Kingdom Hearts universe, and will we potentially see like more spin-off series down the line at some point?
Gosh, I don't know. I'm not the creative force. I think it depends. You know, they tend to look into a lot of marketing, and I would say they look at what character or characters tend to have the biggest impact on an audience, and that's where companies like Disney and or Square Enix would look to do spin-offs. So yeah, anything's possible, and of course it's my hope that Axel might be involved in something like that. That would be really cool.
That would be fun.
You never know where it could go, or what kind of crossover it could have with other characters from a similar or related universe, especially with Disney owning Marvel. Worlds could collide.
Absolutely, and that would be amazing actually. And speaking about, of course, with Marvel, now of course with Marvel regaining the rights back to the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, and having played across in the Marvel universe yourself with Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes as Malekith, the Dark Elf, are there any particular characters or storylines that you want to see adapted for live action, whether it's Marvel or DC?
Gosh. I mean, it seems like so many of them have been done. I'm thrilled to know that they're bringing Fantastic Four back, because I actually voiced Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, in the 1994 animated series, and that was a lot of fun. As the Torch, flame on. And I did voice Malekith the Accursed in an episode of the Avengers, the Ultimate Avengers animated series. I think it would be fun. Actually, there was a character in the Marvel comics that I used to read as a kid named Werewolf. And it came out in the 70s, the same time as Ghost Rider. And Ghost Rider, of course, they did the one film with Nicolas Cage. And they've never done anything with the werewolf before. And I would love to see them do something with him.
Absolutely, and I think because of the fact that it's funny that you were mentioning about, of course, with the werewolf character, because they are starting to go into more darker, more supernatural kind of characters. Obviously, them doing the Moon Knight series with Oscar Isaac playing the lead role of Mark Spector, which I think is fantastic, and of course going as far as to get Ethan Hawke as the main villain, and of course them talking about casting Keanu Reeves as potentially Ghost Rider. I think it's because they're now starting to go more deeper into the more darker, more violent characters. I think Werewolf would be a really good one for either Ghost Rider or even for the Blade series as well with Mahershala Ali.
I would love to see Werewolf with Ghost Rider, and I think that casting Keanu Reeves as Ghost Rider is an excellent call. Because he's intense, but he's also quiet, and he can play tortured with a sense of reality that won't be overblown. It'd be more psychological, a more psychologically damaged character.
Absolutely.
Now, who they would cast for the werewolf, I don't know, but I'm also thrilled to hear that Ethan Hawke is working. He's one of my favorites.
Absolutely. At this point, anything is really possible with the comic book universe, whether it's Marvel or DC. They can pretty much do whatever they want at this point.
No, you're right. And gosh, DC, I'm trying to think. Well, they seem to have it covered. There's no one coming to mind right now out of DC that I haven't seen that I'd like to see. But I'd have to dig out my old comics, and there's no time for that right now.
That's no problem at all. I think personally for me, with regards to DC, actually, obviously everyone has been talking so much about with Henry Cavill wanting to do the next Superman movie, because of the whole talk that's been going about of them doing an African American version of Superman off in another universe somewhere, with I would really love to see them do an adaptation of Superman Brainiac. Actually, I would love to see them do Brainiac in the Superman movies, because I feel like he's the one Superman villain that we haven't seen in any of the Superman movies. Even,
no, you're right.
And especially because of the story with Christopher Reeve, actually Richard Donner, sorry, wanting to use Brainiac as the main villain for Superman 3, had he have still been working on the Christopher Reeve Superman movies at the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, Brainiac, I would love to see Brainiac. And do you remember a character named Thunderbolt?
Yes, the Marvel's Thunderbolts, which are essentially Marvel's version of the Suicide Squad.
Right.
Well, as far as
popped in my head.
Well, as far as what I know about that, they actually have been teasing the Thunderbolts for the last couple of Marvel series, especially like with Falcon and Winter Soldier, like starting to tease out the idea of the Thunderbolts, which I feel like they're going to leave for a TV show down the line, and essentially turn that into their version of the Suicide Squad. I would love to see them do Thunderbolts, even do the Dark Avengers in the movies at some point.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
And especially because in the fact that, like, they're obviously leaning a lot heavier on the whole Spider-Man mythology with the whole Dr. Octopus, Electro coming back. It's like, all right, at this point, all they have left to do is Green Goblin, and we're ready for Dark Avengers at some point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love Dr. Octopus and Electro, and of course, what was his name? Maybe you just mentioned him. Of course, he had the globe around his head.
Mysterio.
Mysterio, yeah.
Well, they ended up... Well, it's funny that you mentioned that with Mysterio, actually, because they actually did Mysterio in the last Spider-Man movie with Jake Gyllenhaal playing the character.
Yeah. And of course, they did the Lizard, who, as a kid, growing up reading the comics, I loved the Lizard, but he came and went pretty quickly. I was hoping for more of him. And then, I think, it's interesting, they did Aquaman, but nobody's talking about Submariner, or Submariner, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
I think really at this point, with any of the stories that they've done, I think the greatest thing that they're doing is that they're going to characters that we haven't really seen on screen before. That's what they've been doing for the whole Spider-Man movies, with not going back to the classics that we've seen in the previous movies.
Now, I'm curious. I think I caught all the Spider-Man movies except one. Did they ever bring in? They did bring in Kingpin, but only a little bit, correct?
They actually haven't done Kingpin in the live-action movies with Vincent D'Onofrio.
Good. That's what I thought. Again, Kingpin was a great character when I was a kid. Again, in the comics, and I used to watch reruns of the original 60s Spider-Man series. They had a great jazz music soundtrack, and Kingpin chomping on a big cigar. I mean, he was the size of like 2.5 Men. He was so huge, and I don't mean 2.5 Men, the sitcom. And I would love to see Kingpin for sure.
Absolutely, because I think because of the fact that we've had the Daredevil TV show with Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin and Charlie Cox as Daredevil, that there has been, I think in some way you can consider them, I'm considering them to be canon anyway, so it's now just a question of getting Vincent D'Onofrio. Even Vincent D'Onofrio has actually said that he wants to cross over in the Spider-Man movies at one point with Tom Holland. So anything's possible at this point. Anything is possible.
Tom Holland's great, and I love Vincent D'Onofrio. He's a real journeyman actor. Love him.
Absolutely, and because that would be just fantastic. At this point with the Marvel and with the comic book universe just in general, anything is possible at this point.
Do you watch the series Gotham at all?
I actually have seen a few episodes of the Gotham TV show, and especially for myself being a massive Batman fan, having read Batman, the Daughter of the Demon storyline, which was a big Ra's al Ghul story, Batman Year One, and of course this year having finished Batman The Long Halloween, I actually looked at the Gotham TV show as just like it's one interpretation of the Batman mythology.
Yeah, I only saw the first couple seasons, and I didn't track it after that. but a guy that is an acquaintance of mine, and real wonderful guy and a fantastic actor, Donald Logue, was in that series, and I thought he was great. It was interesting to see how a young officer, Gordon, kind of fell under his tutelage or around him, and Donald, of course, played kind of a haggard, a disheveled, I would say heavy drinking detective who had stomach problems, like an ulcer. He used to drink like, kind of a stomach aid, like a Pepto-Bismol. Must have been fun for him to play. Reminds me of kind of the old noir stuff that went on back in the 30s and 40s.
It's funny you mentioned about that, because Batman obviously does lend itself very, very well to a lot of very noir kind of stories and a lot of detective thrillers and all that kind of stuff, because that's where they're kind of going back into with the whole, or at least that's where they're going with the new Batman movies with Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson, is just going back to that whole detective scenario of...
Which I love.
Which I think is fantastic, actually. And, of course, them taking a lot of inspiration from the Long Halloween story, but Matt Reeves saying we're just going back to his roots as the world's greatest detective, which I think is fantastic, and that we haven't really seen with Batman in any of the live-action films, except for the Michael Keaton Batman movies, and several of the other Batman movies that came after Michael Keaton that explored that more detective side of him, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Keaton was close. His film series was a little closer to that noir style detective, and they really haven't picked up on the Frank Miller Dark Knight graphic novel take on Batman. And I was speaking with my brother Bart about this recently, and he said he thought that years ago Clint Eastwood would have been fantastic as the grizzled, older Bruce Wayne, from the Dark Knight series, the Frank Miller graphic novels. Did you read any of those? Have you?
I actually haven't read The Dark Knight Returns, but I have seen the animated movie, though, and I've actually got The Dark Knight Returns myself, and it was a fantastic movie. I know it's one of the best comic book stories of all time, because Frank Miller helped to define what Batman became when the 70s and the 80s happened, because that's when Batman pushed in that more darker side of himself after the whole Adam West and Bill Finger Bob Kane era. But I think Clint Eastwood would be a fantastic choice for the more older version.
Would have, by this point he's been aged out of it, but they could put him in something in some way.
Absolutely.
But, in Miller's graphic novels, character he was older, he was physically larger, and he was a brute. And that's not something that they've really done with any of the Batman series. Although perhaps with Christian Bale and his, gritty voice, maybe he was going for something like that. I never quite understood the crossover between his voice as Bruce Wayne, and then once he was in a suit, going from a gentleman who speaks like this to a guy who talks like this. No one I've ever spoken to has ever had a problem with it, but it's just something that occurred to me. I thought, what happens when he puts a suit on that voice comes out? Is it some form of an intensity that he's letting loose with? Is it something he's covering up when he's actually Bruce Wayne? What is it? What do you think, Simon?
I think personally for me, you have to kind of take a look at that as just like what Christopher Nolan intended for the franchise, as to take a look at like a more realistic version of Batman. Like what if Batman had existed in the real world? How would that act like? So I tried to look at it as just kind of like that interpretation of it. And Christian Bale just being a method actor in that sense, and just like, all right, what would happen if someone was to dress up in a Batman costume? How would they go approaching that? Or how would they act if they were Batman in real life?
Right, and I just wondered though, with the voice shift that he did, was it because he was trying to mask himself as the Batman? I'm just curious about the psychology of it, that's all.
For me personally, I tried to look at it as though like he was masking his voice as Batman, and again, trying to be that darker sort of side of it, but trying to put a more realistic take on it in that sense, and that you're meant to be terrified with him, but at the same time you're like, I'm not sure if I can take this guy's voice very seriously.
Right.
With the way that...
not if he was wearing a suit and he had the cowl off.
Pretty much so, yeah. That's the way I look at it myself anyway, but I think the closest they have gotten to that kind of Dark Knight Returns aspect of it is, I think, a little bit closer to Ben Affleck's version of the Batman from Batman v Superman, because Zack Snyder did speak about how he was taking a lot of the aesthetic from Frank Miller from The Dark Knight Returns for Ben Affleck's Batman. So you can kind of say in a way that Ben Affleck was kind of as close to a version of the Dark Knight Returns version of Batman that we've seen before. He's just obviously not an old man at this point.
Right, and there might be people listening to this interview right now screaming that, Quinton, what about Ben Affleck? And I just have to admit I've not seen Ben as Batman, so that's why I haven't mentioned him. So now I'll have to watch it.
That's no problem at all. That's absolutely no problem. It goes back to what I was saying about with just looking at it as just one interpretation of that particular mythology and such. There's always going to be more versions of Batman than we can handle in the next few years. If they can manage to have like Robert Pattinson as Batman and then bring Michael Keaton back as Batman for the Flash movie at the same time, then what else can they possibly do?
Right. Well, and Keaton's at the right age to be that grizzled version of Miller's Batman, so he could really get down with that.
Absolutely.
I gotta say, I'm honored to say I had an opportunity to play Alberto Falcone in the video game Batman Arkham City Origins. So that was really cool. It was fun because I got tortured by the Penguin, and it was an interesting take by Nolan North, who played him as a Brit. And then my character, Alberto, was actually on medication. He had perhaps a psychosis. So I'm bringing it back around to the top of our interview, where he kind of lost it. And it was a fun scene where a nurse was calling him and telling him he needed to come in and see the doctor. And you can hear him losing his mind, saying that he doesn't need any doctor. And then he ends up doing some terrorizing in the game, and I won't give anything away. No spoilers.
But no, that's absolutely fantastic though, and it's funny that you were mentioning about, of course, with with the Penguin, of course, because we're obviously going to be getting a new version of the Penguin in the Robert Pattinson Batman movies with Colin Farrell in this case. So
yeah, and I wonder what kind of voice he'll be affecting.
I did hear him speak a little bit in the new Batman trailer when they released that last year. So they obviously haven't released too much footage of Colin Farrell yet, but he's definitely getting into it though. So I think he's going to do a fantastic job though.
Was he using an American accent, or?
It sounded like he was using an American accent. So it did sound like that way.
Yeah. Great.
So,
now, that should be cool.
So absolutely.
I gotta say, I did love this 1960s TV series with Adam West and Burt Ward. Burgess Meredith as the Penguin was so much fun. I mean, he was great. And if you've not seen it, you must. Cesar Romero as the Joker was genius. Frank Gorshin as the Riddler gave us the ultimate laugh. And there are no coincidences that Jim Carrey ended up playing him as the Riddler. Being an impressionist myself, as is Jim Carrey, many of us looked to Frank Gorshin as kids for our impressions, and of course he played the Riddler. So I think it was only right that Carrey should have played it.
Absolutely. I think it, and again, just goes back to that whole idea of the whole interpretation side of it, basically. Just like what is, and I think at the end of the day, what you want, like that particular character or that particular mythology to look and feel like. What do you want a Batman movie to look and feel like? Do you want it to be closer to the 1960s version with Adam West, or like the comics, from the 40s, or do you want it to be more closer to the darker tone of like Frank Miller style?
Well, I think that I think we can all agree that what they did in the '60s, the campy comedic nature, I don't see any way of them repeating that. I can't see them topping it. It wasn't something that originated from any of the comics at all. But the other two genres you mentioned are terrific. I personally would like to see the Frank Miller style. Again, a bit more. I don't know. Like I said, gritty, and maybe a throwback. Maybe from the '40s. What was the film they did? And they did it a bit of a comic book style with Mickey Rourke. I'm blanking.
I honestly have no idea myself either. But
you know what? It'll come to me when I'm not thinking. I can see it in my mind because they kind of flip pages, and it reminded me the way they lit it and the toughness of it, of what Frank Miller had done with a graphic novel. And right now, audience members are saying, "Quinton, stop saying Frank Miller. We've heard you say it." But I think it's called Sin City.
Yes.
That's it. So I think they had an idea there. Some of that, Sin City crossed with The Crow.
That would be fantastic, actually. And look, Matt Reeves is already developing a live-action Batman spin-off series from his Robert Pattinson Batman universe, and he's even going as far as to develop a new Batman the Animated Series with Bruce Timm. So so anything at this point is possible, basically.
Definitely.
So if you want to trust in anyone, trust in Matt Reeves. So he's...
That sounds cool.
Absolutely. And going a little further into this is, where do you hope to see yourself with regards to like acting and entertainment in the long run?
An excellent question, and it's one that I've been asking myself over this COVID period. I think all of us have had an opportunity for self-reflection, whether we'd like it or not. And for years I was on the go. I would say oftentimes a human doing instead of a human being, and I was constantly on the run, one project to the next, traveling, touring, doing things in the studio, behind the mic, whether it was for animated, video games, commercials, promos, narration. I love narrating. I did a series called I Kill For You for the Investigation Discovery Channel. I would love to do more narration. I'm a big fan of Orson Welles and James Earl Jones, and they are actors who really use their voice with great nuance. I'd like to do some audiobooks, and I love the stage. I love doing improvisational stand-up comedy, but I would like to delve into television and film. I would like to do situation comedy, perhaps the one that I'm thinking of that I'm writing with my friend Richard if he gets off the ground. And I would also like to play some villains, because they're quite enjoyable to play. Because villains don't know that they're bad people. There's a character I play for the game League of Legends named Jin the Virtuoso, and he's one of the most popular characters in that series. And I have had so much fun with him that I would love to kind of continue down that line. And or being a professor, the likes of which they have in a series like the NCIS series. David, see if I get the pronunciation of his last name correct, McCown, I believe, who in the '60s was a spy in a TV show called The Man from U.N.C.L.E. But in the last 15 years, he was one of the original scientists. To be able to play somebody like that would be fun. A professor, perhaps a tortured professor or scientist in a lab, working on the right side of the law. Perhaps it goes off the rails. I like character work, and I love dialects, accents, I should say.
Mm.
And nothing would thrill me more than to be able to throw myself into something like that. Get out there in front of the folks for people to see me and immerse myself in that kind of darkness. And then, by the same token, being more of myself in a situation comedy where I just get to be me.
I think that's fantastic, and that's absolutely wonderful. And without going into any spoilers, what else is next for Quinton Flynn for the fans to know about?
I'm sorry, in regards to what?
So, without going into any spoilers, what's next for Quinton Flynn? What else is next for Quinton Flynn for the fans to know about?
Well, I touched on it earlier. There's an animated film that I've done that I can't talk about. I've got a couple of singles that I've written and recorded that were produced by a gentleman by the name of Mark Danzeisen, who's out in Los Angeles, specifically Burbank, California. He's got Sausage Factory Studios. Just a hell of a player and producer. Great wit, great writer, and a multi-instrumentalist. So he and I got together pre-COVID and knocked out a couple of songs that I've written. And then we put them on the back burner. But right now we've decided, you know what? It's time to put them out there, set them free. Let's not wait for a whole album. Let's release some singles to the fans and let them see this other side of me as a musician. So that's up next. And as I said, the weekend of 4th of July, anyone who's here in the States, you can find me in Illinois for a convention there. Beyond that, we shall see. It just depends on when things open up. And more projects happen in the world of voiceover. More is to come. More will be revealed. More than that, I cannot say.
That's absolutely fantastic. That is really, really wonderful. And final question, what do you think Axel would say if he was in Australia?
You mean visiting?
Yes.
Oh my God, let's see. Let me see if Axel. Oh, it's great to be here. Oh my God, look! Would you look at the size of those Crocs? And I'm not talking about the shoes on that person's feet. I mean, look at that alligator's mouth or that crocodile's mouth. Sometimes I can't tell the difference. All I know is it's not animated, it's real, and it looks really hungry. Got it memorized? And then he might say, you know what, I love that Quinton Flynn. Be sure to look out for him, or I should say, listen to him on the Audiobook, Untitled Chapter. Check it out.
That is fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful.
Go to Audible. And to all my friends in Darwin, hello, Sydney, Perth, Mackay. I miss you all.
That is fantastic. That is really, really amazing. Quinton Flynn, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor.
Oh, thank you, Simon. You're terrific. It's been a real pleasure.
It's been an absolute honor to have you back on HannaTalk. And is there anything that you would like to say to the fans out there in Australia and in the world?
Yeah, I just want to say I love you all. I wish you the best. Stay close to one another. Follow your bliss, whatever your dreams are. Keep them close. And enjoy yourself. And God bless. Until we meet again, I look forward to seeing you. And thanks for your support.
That is absolutely fantastic. Well, guys, if you'd like to find out more about Quinton Flynn, you can check out the links which I'll put to in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to HannaTalk, and don't forget to check out the links as well as comment below if you have any suggestions or requests. Thank you all so much for listening. This is Simon and Quinton Flynn signing off. Bye for now.